Losing a loved one to mesothelioma is a devastating experience that leaves families searching for answers and justice. Today, we are providing a comprehensive review of the Mesothelioma Wrongful Death Lawsuit process in 2026. We will explain who is eligible to file and what steps you must take to secure the compensation your family deserves. For many families, the financial burden of medical bills and funeral costs can be overwhelming, but it is important to know that legal recourse is available to hold the responsible companies accountable. Most cases of mesothelioma are the result of corporate negligence, where companies knew about the dangers of asbestos but failed to warn their workers. A wrongful death lawsuit is a civil legal action filed by the surviving family members or the estate of a person who has passed away from an asbestos-related disease. In 2026, the legal landscape for these claims remains strong, with billions of dollars still available in asbestos trust funds, specifically designated for victims and their heirs. Let us first discuss eligibility, because not everyone can file a wrongful death claim. Typically, the right to file falls to immediate family members, such as a surviving spouse or children or parents. In some states, the personal representative of the victim's estate is the one required to initiate the legal action. If you are unsure about your legal standing, our guide recommends consulting with a specialized mesothelioma attorney who can review your relationship to the deceased and determine your eligibility under your specific state laws. Speaking of state laws, we must address the statute of limitations, which is the most critical deadline in any legal case. These deadlines vary significantly across the country, ranging from just 1 year in states like California and Tennessee to as long as 6 years in North Dakota. In most states, the clock begins to tick on the date of the loved one's death, but in some jurisdictions it may begin when the family first discovers that the death was linked to asbestos exposure. Because these deadlines are so strict, we cannot emphasize enough how important it is to act quickly after the passing of a loved one. Missing this window could permanently bar your family from seeking any form of financial recovery. Now let us walk through the steps of the compensation process. The first step is the investigation, where your legal team will gather evidence to link the diagnosis to specific asbestos products. This involves reviewing decades of work history and military records and union documents to pinpoint exactly where the exposure occurred. Many workers were exposed in shipyards and power plants and construction sites, or even through second-hand exposure if a worker brought asbestos fibers home on their clothing. In 2026, sophisticated databases allow attorneys to identify the responsible manufacturers, even if those companies have long since gone out of business. If a company has filed for bankruptcy, your claim will be filed against an asbestos trust fund, which is a much faster and more streamlined process than a traditional trial. For companies that are still in business, a lawsuit is filed in the appropriate court jurisdiction. The next step involves gathering medical evidence, such as pathology reports and death certificates and physician statements that confirm mesothelioma was the cause of death. Having a clear medical link is essential for a successful claim. Once the claim is filed, the process of discovery begins, where both sides exchange information and take depositions. Most mesothelioma wrongful death cases in 2026 are resolved through settlements rather than going to a jury trial. A settlement is a guaranteed payout that provides immediate financial relief to the family without the uncertainty of a court verdict. You may be wondering about the average compensation amounts we are seeing this year. In 2026, the average settlement for a mesothelioma wrongful death claim ranges between $1 million and $1.4 million. If a case does go to trial and results in a successful verdict, the payouts can be much higher, often ranging from $5 million to over $11 million, depending on the circumstances of the exposure and the impact on the family. This compensation can be used to cover unpaid medical bills and funeral expenses and the loss of future income that the deceased would have provided. It also accounts for the loss of companionship and the emotional suffering of the survivors. It is important to choose an attorney who works on a contingency fee basis, which means you pay nothing upfront and they only receive a percentage if they win your case. This ensures that every family has access to top-tier legal representation regardless of their current financial situation. Throughout 2026, we are seeing more families successfully navigate this process by staying organized and working with experienced legal advocates. The goal of this guide is to empower you with the knowledge that you do not have to face this journey alone, and that the law is on your side when it comes to holding negligent companies accountable. Thank you for watching this Mesobook official review, and we hope this information provides a path forward for your family during this difficult time. Securing the financial future of your family after the loss of a loved one to mesothelioma is a complex task that requires a clear understanding of the legal paths available in 2026. This guide is designed to walk you through the specific eligibility requirements and the multi-step process for filing a wrongful death claim. We begin by recognizing that mesothelioma is almost entirely a man-made tragedy, caused by the willful negligence of companies that prioritized profit over human life. When a loved one passes away from this asbestos-related cancer, the legal right to hold these companies accountable does not disappear, but instead transfers to the survivors through the estate. In 2026, the first step for any family is to determine who has the legal standing to act as the petitioner. In most jurisdictions, this is the surviving spouse, followed by children and then other dependents, but every state has its own hierarchy for who can lead a wrongful death action. Sometimes the court must officially appoint an executor or an administrator for the estate before any legal paperwork can be filed against an asbestos company. Once the representative is identified, the investigation into the deceased worker's history begins in earnest. This is often the most time-consuming part of the process because asbestos exposure typically occurred 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. Our legal partners in 2026 use advanced industrial archives and union dispatch records to recreate a timeline of where the loved one worked and which specific brands of asbestos, insulation or floor tiles or rake linings they handle. Even if the company where they worked has long since closed its doors, the manufacturers of the asbestos products they used are often still reachable through the bankruptcy trust system. It is important to understand the difference between a lawsuit and a trust fund claim because they offer different paths to compensation. A lawsuit is filed against a company that is still active and solvent, and these cases often lead to the highest payouts through settlements or jury verdicts. However, over 60 major asbestos companies have declared bankruptcy and were forced by the courts to set aside billions of dollars in trust funds. In 2026, these trusts are governed by specific payment percentages designed to ensure that money remains available for future victims. For example, some trusts may pay out 25% of the scheduled value of a claim, while others, like the NACO Trust, have been known to pay up to 100%. A skilled attorney will file claims against every single trust where your loved one was exposed to a specific product, which allows you to stack multiple payouts from different sources. The total value of these claims can vary, but the average settlement for a wrongful death case in 2026 is between $1 million and $1.4 million. If a case proceeds to a trial and a jury returns a verdict for the family, the awards can be significantly higher, often reaching $5 million to $10 million or more. These funds are intended to compensate the family for several types of damages, including the medical bills that accumulated before the loved one's passing, and the loss of the financial support they would have provided to the household. Perhaps more importantly, the law allows for non-economic damages, which account for the loss of companionship and the emotional pain and suffering that comes from losing a parent or a spouse to such a painful disease. We must also discuss the role of the statute of limitations, which is a strict deadline for filing your claim. In 2026, many states have a 2-year window from the date of death, but some states like California only provide 1 year, while others like Florida have their own unique requirements for notice. If you wait too long to contact a lawyer, you could lose the right to file forever, regardless of how strong your evidence is. Our guide recommends a free case evaluation as soon as possible so that an attorney can protect your deadlines. While the evidence is still fresh, as you move through this process, you will be asked to provide medical records,